This is a video essay in response to the COVID-19 crisis. I'm not going to make a long introduction. This will have to suffice from Henry Morley's introduction to Alexander Pope's essay on man. The reader of Pope, as of every author, is advised to begin by letting him say what he has to say in his own manner to an open mind that seeks only to receive the impressions which the writer wishes to convey. First, let the mind and spirit of the writer come into free, full contact with the mind and spirit of the reader, whose attitude at the first reading should be simply receptive. Such reading is the condition precedent to all true judgment of a writer's work. All criticism that is not so grounded spreads as fog over a poet's page. Read, reader, for yourself, without once pausing to remember what you have been told to think. And then in this blog, references will go below, a stanza from my own poem, Globalization Unentangled, borrows from the works of H.G. Wells, which we'll come to later. The idea before it was clothed in words, heard in minds as uttered thought, the communication of arranged ideas, thoughts lifting mist from the poet's page, to set the stage, not in the round, but to see the scene in the sphere. Which actors will the playwright lay on the page's narrative to steer? So, where's this all taking us to? I'm going to go through these windows, and I've also made a number of links underneath this next video link here. Now, this is an older documentary called The Last DRUID, a documentary on Ben McBrady of the old Gaelic order. He was the last druid in a Gaelic order, and it's a very, very interesting documentary about lost knowledge. And you can see in the description, I'll just read the description. Ben McBrady, known as Brady, of the name and Herenach of the two Kilmores, was Erniak and Herenach of a pre-Druidic megalithic order called the Old Gaelic Order, often referred to simply as the Order. Ben McBrady is believed to have been the last member of the Old Gaelic Order. Because of this, he was called the Last Druid. He passed away in January of 1996. Ben McBrady was a descendant of Luga MacClure, Lugaid Mac Lugi, who was chief druid of Ireland and druid to the High King Leary and the kings of Leinster. Luga MacLuga was also believed to have been a member of the Old Gaelic Order. Now, it's the film finishes with a reading from James Joyce's Ulysses, who, of course, was the main protagonist in the old Greek poem, the Iliad. And it takes its chapters. But the last chapter is the title of this video, which is to say yes to life. And you can see here, this is the same video which I took off YouTube and put onto BitChute. And I highlighted this area of the text here, which starts at, where are we? Let's start at 46 minutes here and just get up here.
Tried it and still do. He kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well, as well him as another. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes. And then he asked me, would I? Yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me, so he could feel my breasts all perfume, yes, and my heart was going like mad, and yes, I said, yes, I will, yes. And the way I look at life is what distinguishes, say, great writers like Joyce from others is that they are yea-sayers to life. The last sentence in Yolo says is yes, yes, yes. Molly Bloom is saying yes to life. So I was taught that lesson, that we must say yes to life. We must take the positive. The other side lies death and destruction, which is created by us. We can create death. We can't create life. And man is engaged to the limit of his faculties and abilities in creating death. That's why great transformation has to come. Otherwise, everything goes. That's the moral I derive from that whole issue. So now I continue traveling hopefully, which is better than to arrive.
Traveling hopefully, which is better than to arrive. So come with me on the journey through this information contained in this film on Ben McBrady. So in BitChute, there are a comment section, and so what I did some tweets through this morning as I was listening to that video, and things that occurred to me as Ben was making some points. Towards the end of the video, he mentions Pelagius, and I'm very interested in Pelagianism and the work of Pelagius and Pelagius's disputations with Saint Augustine, and this narrative that we get from the Nicene Creed and the evolution of ecclesiastical religion as opposed to religion. Now, this is a point which is made in this video by Robert Graves, where he says, I know my Bible, but I'm not an ecclesiastic. And he talks about the esoteric sides of the Bible. Graves's poem, The Welsh Incident, I just want to play that now. If we just click here.
But that was nothing to what things came out from the sea caves of Cricket yonder. What were they?
Let's just start that again.
Dragons. But that was nothing to what things came out from the sea caves of Cricket yonder. What were they? Mermaids, dragons, ghosts? Nothing at all of anything like that. What were they then? All sorts of queer things, things never seen or heard or written about, very strange, un-Welsh, utterly peculiar things. Oh, solid enough they seemed to touch had anyone dared it. Marvelous creation, all various shapes and sizes, and no sizes, all new, each perfectly unlike his neighbor, though all came moving slowly out together. Describe just one of them. I am unable. What were their colours? Mostly nameless colours, colours you'd like to see, but one was puce, or perhaps more like crimson, but not purplish. Some had no colour. Tell me, had they legs? Not a leg nor a foot amongst them that I saw. But did these things come out in any order? What o'clock was it? What was the day of the week? Who else was present? How was the weather? I was coming to that. It was 3:30 on Easter Tuesday last. The sun was shining. The Harlech silver band played Marchog Yesi on 37 shimmering instruments, collecting for Carnarvon's fever hospital fund. The populations of Porthelly, Cricket, Port Maddock, Borth, Tremaddock, Penryn, DRUID were all assembled. Cricket's mayor addressed them first in good Welsh and then in fluent English, twisting his fingers in his chain of office, welcoming the things. They came out on the sand, not keeping time to the band, moving seaward silently at a snail's pace. But at last, the most odd, indescribable thing of all, which hardly one man there could see for wonder, did something, recognizably a something. Well, what? It made a noise. A frightening noise. No. A musical noise, a noise of scuffling. No, but a very loud, respectable noise, like groaning to oneself on Sunday morning in chapel close before the second psalm. What did the mayor do? I was coming to that.
I was coming to that. And so, as we go down these links, I'll just explain what some of them are doing here. This link to this blog here, Report on Probability and Mathematics of Language, is looking at linguistics and this idea of language being a byproduct of thought. And what Brady says in the video is that in a golden age before people had language, they communicated through telepathy. Now, this is an area which a guy called Rupert Sheldrake looks into, something called morphic resonance, which is a very interesting idea about how knowledge doesn't reside in our heads or our brains, but it's something we sort of pull out of the ether, as it were. Now, where this actually then takes us to is here. This is an episode of the In Our Time programme on BBC with Melvyn Bragg, and it's about the Pelagian controversy, which I referred to previously, which is the disputation between St. Augustine and Pelagius. And Brady explains that Pelagius is the heretic of all heretics, but he really talked about a form of Christianity going back to the old esoteric knowledge that existed before hard materialism. And this slide on the front here is the matrix and free will versus determinism. I've been interested. There's a series on the BBC Science section at the moment about free will and determinism, and whether that's just a coincidence or whether this is part of the idea of this current lockdown, is that we're all to accept the party line that no, we do not have free will. Everything's determined, so we should just shut up and do as we're told. So that's the Pelagian controversy here. And 36:45, if we just dip back into the video here, and I'll just click in here at 36. We'll just go
within monastic communities, religions of all kinds. In this country, it may have narrowed down the number, in that, so far as I'm aware, the surviving members of the order had to have several primary requirements for admission. A, they had to have telepathic power. B, they had to be poets. C, they had to be of the priestly bloodline. And in ancient Ireland, the priestly bloodline was the ruling line because it was priest kings who ruled. It's very likely that some of the very prominent and very strange religious characters in medieval times were members of the order. They did manifest the qualities of those of the order. From my study of history, that appears to me to be the case. From the 6th and up into the 9th century, there were missionaries, Irish missionaries, were keeping in contact with the continent and founding monasteries all over Europe. But these monasteries, because I think of the influence of the order, were monasteries of Pelagianism, not of the Christianity as we know it. Pelagius was eventually condemned as the arch heretic. He was the first and the greatest heretic according to Christian history. But in fact, Pelagianism was the ancient religion which Christ brought back, which was, I think, altered by the Romans, by St. Paul particularly, to suit the Roman Imperium, so that the Catholic religion, Catholic apostolic religion, became the new Roman Empire in the 5th century after the breakup, the so-called breakup of the Roman Empire.
So I've done other videos on Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy, and the Constantine Covenant, etc. Now, this is a huge field in theological history, so I'm not going to dwell on it. If you're interested, you can put some terms in my blog, and then that will have links to other sort of scholarly articles on them. They come in my timeline quite often. There seems to be quite a lot of work going on Pelagianism in theological study at the moment. But this idea of the Roman Empire continuing, it split into the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire, etc. Constantinople in the West and in the East, rather, in the West, Rome. You then take a step back to when the Romans conquered Britain, and then the writings of Bede on that, and most of that history that's accepted or taught in Britain these days actually comes from the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and which is a quite famous book. Now, let's just keep going through these tabs. I'm going to expand on some of these things later, and the purpose of this video essay is to form the notes, which I've been sort of building up on for the past several months, I'm sorry to say. So there we are. Pelagius said this: man's status is better and higher for the very reason for which it is thought to be inferior. So that's this link here. And there's an alleged gas attack on Duma. So this was on it's April 1st today. This is not an April Fool's joke, by the way. So let's just open that link here. I'm going to open and close them as I go. You can see I've got others open along the screen with points ready to make. This is a handbook online which talks about online security, etc. It's very interesting, especially in these sort of trying times. this is the Voltaire network and some work by a guy called Thierry Meyssan, which you may be interested to sort of have a look at some of these things. And Bakunin's prediction. So let's have a look. Here's the Pelagius quote, which I alluded to earlier. So we must now take precautions to prevent you from being embarrassed by something in which the ignorant majority is at fault for lack of proper consideration, and so from supposing with them that man has not been created truly good simply because he is able to do evil. If you reconsider this matter carefully and force your mind to apply a more acute understanding to it, it will be revealed to you that man's status is better and higher for the very reason for which it is thought to be inferior. It is on this choice between two ways, on this freedom to choose either alternative, that the glory of the rational mind is based. It is in this that the whole honour of our nature consists. It is from this that its dignity is derived, and what he's talking about there is free will. And then this is a quote from Mikhail Bakunin from Statism and Anarchism, and he says, they, the Marxists, maintain that only a dictatorship, their dictatorship of course, can create the will of the people, while our answer to this is no dictatorship can have any other aim but that of self-perpetuation, and it can beget only slavery in the people tolerating it. Freedom can be created only by freedom, that is, by a universal rebellion on the part of the people and free organization of the toiling masses from the bottom up. And then there's this quote from Shakespeare's play Timon of Athens, so we'll just do that one when it's here. So, who seeks for better of thee sauce his palate, with thy most operant poison, what is here? Gold, yellow, glittering precious gold, no gods, I am no idle votarist, roots you clear heavens, thus much of this will make black white, foul fair, wrong right, base noble, old young, coward valiant. Ha, you gods, why this? What this, you gods, why this? Will lug your priests and servants from your sides, pluck stout men's pillows from below their heads. This yellow slave will knit and break religions, bless the accursed, make the whore leprosy adored, place thieves and gives them title, knee and approbation, with senators on the bench. This is it, what makes the weaponed widow wed again. So I think you're probably getting a sense for the theme here. And so let's just dip back into these tweets that I did here. Now, this is an incredible poem from the bard Kelvin Oberon. And so now I'm going to play. There are going to be lots of poems in this. I'm a poet, and poetry speaks to the sort of the telepathic communication, the grey space, as Duchamp called it. So let's hear Kelvin Oberon and the Return of the Fairies.
This is a graphical representation of Avalon, which is where I've come from today. And Joyce here from today. And Avalon is a name to describe like Tirn and Og in Gaelic, which is the land of youth, or Shambhala in Tibet in places. It describes a place where people lived on the vibration that never fell in the fall and got trapped in the religious ideas of heaven and hell. This is a graphical representation of Avalon, which is where I've come from today. And Joyce here from today. And Avalon is a name to describe like Tirn and Og in Gaelic, which is the land of youth, or Shambhala in Tibet in places. It describes a place where people lived on the vibration that never fell in the fall and got trapped in the religious ideas of heaven and hell. Places that still coexist with our dimension here. So it's a quite nice picture. Ring-a-ring-a-ding-dong bell. Here's a tale for a fairy to tell. The Return of the Fairies by Kelvin Patrick's Oberon. From those who remember to those who do not, here's a little poem for those who forgot. Of a race of fearless people, noble, strong, and bold, who lived as one with nature and never would grow old. Sculptors of the landscape and servants of the Lord, made into wee folk by Christian, we were mighty gods before. Gods of myth and magic, of heroic deed and fame. A hero's fate may well be tragic, yet death is but a game. In a place before time existed, before man's minds were even born, we built up mighty monuments amidst the hazel, oak, and thorn. We plotted all the seasons by the sun, the stars, and moon, and we built the very first temples, for we knew you would need them soon. The day would come when we must pass on and give of our world to you. But it's there in the plan, make time in space for the man to learn and trust in the truth. So we left you and waited as your dreams accelerated, and we watched you and laughed as your progress you grabbed. And then we listened in anguish at your foul use of language. Now we come to celebrate you as you learn to vibrate. Now we come to remind you of the beauty inside you. Now we come to invite you, we come to excite you, to help you. Remember, Tir na no, the land of ever living, ever young. For know that now your time is fading. We've had enough of your trading. For no longer is there room for your hungers to consume. For no longer are there moments for you to continue nature's torments. For now we shining beings of love come descending from above, from within, without, and forever we are come together, together, forever, together, 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 forever we have come. To recreate our world anew, to make all our dreams come true. Children of light and Lucifer's babies, Templar knights and beautiful ladies, we've come back for our home, long stolen by Rome. We've come back to our womb, which you call our tomb. We have come back with our birthrights, our blessings and songs. We come back to remind you, you've been sleeping too long. Release all your powers, release all your fears, release all your anger. Make way for your tears. There is no need now for worry or separation or grief. The apocalypse is well and truly upon us now.
That really is a beautiful, very moving poem from the bard Kelvin Patrick's Oberon there. The next link here is if you care to go and have a look at it, it's an explanation of and a reading of my own poem Ties of the Dollar Moon, which explains some of the things that are happening in political economy around the dollar, and it talks about silver being the currency to gold, but also how the tides, the moon, nature itself is really the true source of wealth and human liberty. So there we are. And then the next one is this wonderful documentary, which was by the late great Andrew Sherratt, about sacred weeds. And so this is talking again to the subconscious level of communication. I mean, most people have heard of body language, and some people are aware of Rupert Sheldrake's ideas and research on morphic resonance. Less people are aware of the mystical side of even regular ecclesiastical theology, but these are not areas that we need to dig deeply into at this stage. There are links to people's opinions on them, but what I'm trying to aim at here is to say, well, look, I'm not telling anyone what to think. I'm just saying that I'm at a space, and on a particular wavelength, and I'm just trying to tune into the wavelengths of others, and I get a strong sense from my own being that there are more and more people on a wavelength, and that's where I believe inspiration comes from. Going back to the Rupert Graves, Robert Graves interview here, he talks about poems just come, no one knows where they come from. It's a channeling, which is very mystical. It can sometimes be quite painful. The other one is William Blake. He's probably the greatest explainer of how poems are found rather than written. So that's really where this is going. Then this next slide here is to an interview with Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. We hear a lot about 1984 at the moment, and we're in that sort of dystopian episode. Brave New World is equally dystopian, but it's really the slave master class's subjection to the soma, the drugs, etc. I think that's where the red pills and whatever come from. And Huxley, in this interview from the 1950s, goes through all of this, and I listened very carefully to what he said, and took the transcript, and I made a blog on it. But the interview's up here on the BitChute channel. Then this is a documentary film about the ripple effect. Now it's by a guy whose nom de plume is Moadib, and he lives in Ireland and seems very much in tune with the bard, the last bard, Ben Brady, and you'll find Moadib visits to various sort of holy and ancient sites in Ireland, which are neglected by the academy, shall we say, what they mean and are where we've all come from. What has been given up, and further what we're being asked to give up with this lockdown at the moment, this idea of our authoritarian states more effective at handling this plague, COVID-19, or is that better done by democracies? And I mean, the question is predicated upon, I think, a false premise. That's my own view, and you'll find on my own blog why I think that. Then this is a link. I wrote a poem called Globalization Unentangled, which goes into lots of different levels of political economy, national governance, local governance, right up to the supranational and global governance levels, if you like. So that's that. And then this blog here, I'm going to open this one because it's got some very nice graphics in there, which I'm just going to have a quick chat about those. A lot of this work has come from the research I've done on my unfinished novel yet. Find a website with lots of stuff. The Conquest of Dough is a pun on Kropotkin's famous book, Conquest of Bread, and Conquest of Dough is about the money system. So here we go. Graphics informing context for brotherhood in common ancestry. So you can see how this is relevant. So let me just read this, and then there's this alchemist's prayer, which I think is something which Newton would have been familiar with concepts. It's well known that he was a secret alchemist, and I mean, some people will see these things as satanic, etc. I just don't respond to that kind of wicked, evil sort of thing. So it's interesting, and what I take from it is look at the ideas and then go off and place those ideas into different contexts. I call it triangulation, to try and get back to from where these ideas and from where they come from and how they relate to where I am at my point in space and time, on my own wavelength, and seek to try and gain a better understanding. So the new moon, the full moon, and the waning moon are all times for heightened awareness, when the veils between the worlds are thin. Good times to tune into yourself in a wordless, deep way, and let the information of order, balance, harmony, and flow attune your energies to the cosmic rhythm. And then there's this. So the alchemist's prayer is this: O most singular and unspeakable presence, first and last in the universe, heighten the fury of my fire and burn away the dross of my being. Cleanse my soiled soul, bathe me in your awesome light. Set me free from my past, cut me loose from my boundaries, unite me with the one thing hidden in my life, wherein is my only strength. Fill me with your presence, allow me to see through your eye, grant me entry to your mind, let me resonate with your sacred will, make me transport to your flame, and fashion me into a lens for your light only. Transmute me into an incorruptible stone in your eternal service, like the golden light that surrounds you. Personally, I don't like it. You know, you may differ, and there may be people that sort of find there's some sort of deep spiritual meaning that I don't like it. But then this leads on then to H.G. Wells's novel Men Like Gods, which was published in 1923, and I've cut out this quote here, which comes from here. So this is on the Gutenberg website, which has got lots of out of copyright works. So it's this paragraph here. So Mr. Barnstable, with his brain resigning its functions, maintained his pose of deferential attention. Ages ago, our thread continued, we certainly used to speak languages. We made sounds and we heard sounds. People used to think and then chose and arranged words and uttered them. The hearer heard, noted, and retranslated the sounds into ideas. Then, in some manner, which we still do not understand perfectly, people began to get the idea before it was clothed in words and uttered in sounds. They began to hear in their minds as soon as the speaker had arranged his ideas, and before he put them into word symbols, even in his own mind. They knew what he was going to say before he said it. This direct transmission presently became common. It was found out that with a little effort, most people could get over to each other in this fashion to some extent, and the new mode of communication was developed systematically. That is what we do now habitually in this world. We think directly to each other. We determine to convey the thought, and it is conveyed at once, provided the distance is not too great. We use sounds in this world now only for poetry and pleasure, and in moments of emotion, or to shout at a distance, or with animals, not for the transmission of ideas from human mind to kindred human mind anymore. When I think to you, the thought, so far as it finds corresponding ideas and suitable words in your mind, is reflected in your mind. My thought clothes itself in words in your mind, which words you seem to hear, and naturally enough in your own language and your own habitual phrases. Very probably the members of your party are hearing what I am saying to you, each with his own individual difference of vocabulary and phrasing. You should get the idea, and this is, of course, drawing upon these ideas which Ben McBrady has mentioned at the beginning of the clip that I played previously. So anyway, so that's what that was, and I was just going to show you these graphics appearing down from there, I think. Let's see, where were we up to? We've done that one, and we've heard from Kelvin. Right, so you can see where the stanza in this poem comes from. And then here are various trade routes, and these are things that Andrew Sherritt studies, and you'll find on the origins of farming and whatnot on the Conquest of Thoreau website. There's quite a lot from Andrew Sherritt's old, he was an Oxford professor of archaeology and stuff. So these are some graphics of Eastern philosophy and sort of timelines going back from different people that we know about. You can look at the links in your own time, the history of philosophy and Western philosophy and the different schools of philosophy, history of metals, like most people have heard of the Bronze Age and the Iron Age or whatever. But this is a kind of like an industrial continuum through to the present state of material science. And then this basic world history timeline, which goes back to prehistory. Now, the early Bronze Age, going back to Acadia and cuneiform texts and whatnot, is almost a taboo area. Much of modern history that we taught, maybe it starts with the Norman conquest in Britain, maybe it starts with the Romans coming to Britain. It goes back a lot further than that. And the sense of who we are, what we are, and where we come from, and our ancestry, whatever, is lost to us in modern culture. I believe it resides in us all. It's in our subconsciouses, and in periods when we get a chance to relax, kick back, and meditate, be at leisure. I think it was Nietzsche said that man is never so authentic as when he is at leisure. And of course, there's the old Christian injunction that the devil makes work for idle hands. Now, I think that idle hands lead to active minds and creative critical thinking, etc., and that's where creativity gets tapped into. And that is something that the commissars of world governance really do not want in the population. They want people to shut up, listen, and do as they're told, to learn the lessons that they want to teach about how things are. And I think that in their own narrow terms of references, they could probably say, well, yes, we're right in these, but they never give the context or show the yin and yang of things, if you like. So let's just continue through. As I say, that's an interesting timelines are very good for historical context, etc. So let's just keep going down here. We've talked about Muad'Dib, and the ripple effect is talking about what really happened on 7/7 in the UK, the bombings of the London Tube and the bus, etc. If you watch that video, you may be surprised that there were drills going on the day that coincided with the actual attacks. Now, that happened on 9/11 too. It's happened on various events which have captured the mainstream media's attention, shall we say, and in turn consumers of the mainstream media have been given a particular view of those events that leave out some of the incredible coincidences which may leave people feeling somewhat incredulous, shall we say. So moving on, this was the blog which I did this morning in preparing this video, and so I'm going to just open that link now. Just as an aside at the bottom here, this is a bit of fun. It's talking about the Canterbury Tales and Geoffrey Chaucer, and it's written by an English professor, and it's rather crudely named Chaucer's Cunt. And there's lots of wordplay in Chaucer, some of it really quite near the knuckle. And now we touched on Ulysses earlier, and I'm going to talk about some of the censored stuff in Ulysses coming up. Famous censorship trials, including things like Lady Chatterley's lover. These people who self-appointed guardians of the public morals, as it were, and I found that incredibly funny, so you might want to watch that at any point if you're feeling slightly sort of put off or disturbed by any new information that comes out of this video. Watch that one and have a bit of a laugh, and come back to it, or don't, whatever. So here's the blog, which I'm gonna, this video, when it processes, I'm going to embed in this blog, and then I'm also going to, you know, put the links in, which are already at the bottom of that video anyway, that I've added them to the bottom of the these are all clickable to go to what they're referring to, and they're prompted by different sections of what Ben McBrady, the last bard, last druid rather, the points he makes through this video, which I think is well worth the 49 minutes and 10 seconds or whatever it is, 51 minutes. I think it's well worth the watching. So let's just come here. Right now, the beginning of the title of this blog is the most important video you will ever watch about NWO plans being implemented. Now, what is the New World Order? What is the rules-based international order? World governance, what Gordon Brown was calling for to solve this COVID-19 thing. I was pointed at a video yesterday by Francis Leader, whose Twitter handle is Boudica, the famous Queen of the Britons, who fought the Romans, and is mentioned in Tacitus and his history of Caesar's invasion of Britain. So this is the blog, and I started off with this beautiful Welsh hymn, Calon Lan, which is pure heart. And so what I'm going to do now is play Catherine Jenkins singing Calon Lan. My father used to sing this song. It was his party piece. It's been my party piece over the years as well. And let's just listen. It's well loved by children and adults alike, tuned by John Hughes, but the words by Daniel James, better known by his bardic name, Gurisid, or God knows how you say that. But here we go. Amen indeed. It brings a tear to my eye, I must say. So I start with Colour Lawn and the English translation, and then this animation made by some primary school kids about the life of Daniel James, who was a coal miner, then a steel worker and a tin worker, who lost a wife, lost a son. I'm a Welshman. I was born in Wales, in Tonnereville in the Rhondda Valley, and my parents were both one of 7 children, and both my grandparents went down the pit, as they call it. My father's father wrote a book called The New Moleskin Trousers about his experience of being sent down the pit when he was, I don't know whether it's 12 or 14, whatever it was. And my mum's dad, Clu, he mined all his life, and my mum's brothers. But my father's father, he ended up being the company secretary of Bass in Cardiff, the big brewers. And his journey through learning or whatever took that branch of our family down a slightly different course. And then my mum's side of the family, I'm this miss both sides of the family. My father's dead now, but the idea of that part of my family history. But my middle name is Glyndwr, and my grandfather's name on my dad's side was Lewis Foster Lewis. Now, Glyndwr is, my name comes from Owen Glyndwr, who was the last King of Wales, a sort of mystical figure in Welsh folklore, basically from the last rebellions against the English. And I wrote this poem here, Celtic Bards Speak Out, which is after a poem by a Hungarian poet written under communist censorship called The Bards of Wales, and talking about Edward II and his putting down the Welsh rebellion. And it also talks about how the bards were burnt at the stake because they were all asked to write a poem honouring the conquest of their own fatherland, as it were, motherland, and they refused to do it, and they were burnt at the stake for their troubles, and that's what this poem of mine is about here. You'll find readings of it on the thing. And then we come to the COVID-19 World Economic Forum website, finding a vaccine. Vaccines, there's lots of information about vaccines. You'll find the 2 Vaxxed movies on the BitChute channel. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to play the video that's on the front page of the World Economic Forum website, and just this is a different view.
Are artificial intelligence, migration, and education connected? How can boosting innovation, reducing inequality, and combating corruption help us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? In an increasingly complex world, these connections can be hard to see, yet a systemic understanding of global issues is essential. The World Economic Forum developed strategic intelligence as a set of cutting-edge digital tools to explore, understand, and anticipate the forces driving transformations around the world. At its heart are the Forum's transformation maps. They depict and analyze the interdependencies between a wide range of topics, illustrating how developments in one area can impact others. By drawing on the collective intelligence of the Forum's networks, transformation maps explain the factors driving change across industries, economies, and global issues. For example, by disrupting every aspect of technology, the Fourth Industrial Revolution will have a profound impact on governance and affect the scale and character of conflict. That will test the traditional role of governments, even as they confront other challenges such as the aging populations in advanced economies. Transformation maps cover more than 200 topics and are available in multiple languages. Each topic is defined by its key issues, the most strategic trends shaping that topic. Because we are not looking at topics in isolation, but instead at entire systems in transformation, we highlight how the issues depicted in one map are interdependent with other maps. The content is continuously updated by leading experts from the Forum's extensive network. It is supplemented by a machine-curated feed of the latest findings and analysis from top universities and research institutions, and is enhanced by technologies used in machine learning, artificial intelligence, and advanced network analytics. The platform also incorporates economic, social, and political data, as well as time-lapse satellite imagery, allowing you to visualize trends in areas such as sea level rise, deforestation, global trade flows, and the refugee crisis. Strategic intelligence is the World Economic Forum's most advanced knowledge resource you can use to navigate today's increasingly complex and interconnected world.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is technocracy. And this video here, which was sent to me by Francis yesterday, is a Christian woman's reaction to it, which you might wish to watch. I'd recommend it quite highly. And there's a link to this website too, but let's just dip into this.
It has different objectives. This is an operation. It went into effect when President Trump said he was operationalizing because of this global pandemic. The impact on travel, look at how much travel is impacted, and then also your financial markets. So we're looking right now at the left-hand screen, but let's say we want to know what is the government response. So I'm going to press that one. Now, if you look over to your right, up here, it says government response to COVID-19, and that actually goes down. And then there are some related topics. I want you to know that this is approximately 200 layers deep for each item. Before I forgot, this is the coronavirus, and notice the coronavirus is a spiked virus, and notice the spikes, and each one of these spikes.
Watch the video and make your own mind up. I know what I think, and I must say I agree with the lady in this video and the points that she's making. Right, so let's just go back now to the blog. So that's the page, that's the link there. I did sign up to have a look. I don't hide who I am or whatever online and all the rest of it. It may be advisable for others to do that. So, you know, sign up with a false email and a VPN. A good VPN, actually, while we're at it, is this BitTubers, I think. This is a Web3. I have a channel on here as well as BitChute, which is also a distributed web thing. I also have a YouTube channel, but with this, there's a VPN built in. So if you upload videos, you get credits and they can go to the VPN. You can actually pay. This is based in Lithuania, which is, or Estonia rather, which is kind of New World Order central. It's like the Astana of the Baltic, really, in that they've gone balls out for blockchain, etc., and had a terrible time with liberalization of their economy, etc., and then were declared an economic miracle. Anyway, but you can click on the VPN and you can just select where you want to be. I'm not connected at the moment, but for instance, I can click on select a country, and as far as the internet is concerned, I could be in any of these countries. If you click on Russia, you'll find yourself blocked more often than not, but the US or Germany, is UK or Canada, I usually just go on the UK. And, you know, as far as the web's concerned, I'm in London, and it doesn't, I mean, it can find out who I am if it wants to. There are more elaborate ways of doing that, some of which are outlined in the document, which is if you put Occupy the European Spring into the search engine on the blog here, you'll find some links to a document which is about staying safe online, or staying safe if there's unrest on the streets, etc. But anyway, let's just keep going down through this. That's the World Economic Theory. There are links to that, on that, to the TED interview with Bill Gates, and then also with the guy from Gavin, who are the vaccines people, and they keep these people away from the mainstream. They have quite a few views on TED, and the Bill Gates one, I think, maybe on the actual TED YouTube channel by now. Then this guy here, there's a video from him talking about censorship and war, and censorship in this particular time is quite acute, and it's got hugely worse for the last 2 years. If you look at my Web3 stuff on the website, you'll find quite a bit about, you know, how that all works. So where are we here then? So this is Jeffrey Tucker, he's a libertarian. I don't agree with a lot of his political stuff, but this article of his, which this guy mentions, is very, very good in that the corporate market state, if you like, and the state in general, which never is singled out for recognition, which he quite obviously is right about. I just say they're two cheeks of the same arse at the present time. And then I go on to when Brexit was being talked about. So back in March 2016, I wrote this, sort of saying what happens in America is going to shape Brexit. What happens with Brexit going through now at the end of this year is going to be shaped by the November election. And I make the point that whatever we're doing, it's not even just bodyline bowling. This is the bodyline bowling series. We're actually not even playing cricket anymore, and we're actually playing baseball. And then there's this. This is the quote I mentioned earlier from Bede talking about Edwin, who was King of Northumbria at the time, when he decided they should all convert to Christianity, which again, going back to Druidic times and stuff, and the old religions, that was the start of getting into the Rome, the ecclesiastical theology, as opposed to personal theology, if you like. So this is a bit sort of obtuse, so I will read it anyway. The present life of man, O king, seems to me, in comparison of that time, which is unknown to us, like to the swift flight of a sparrow through the room, wherein you sit at supper in winter, with your commanders and ministers, and a good fire in the midst. While the storms of rain and snow prevail abroad, the sparrow, I say, flying in at one door and immediately out at another, whilst he is within, is safe from the wintry storm. But after a short space of fair weather, he immediately vanishes out of your sight into the dark winter from which he had emerged. So this life of man appears for a short space, but of what went before, or what it is to follow, we are utterly ignorant. If therefore this new doctrine contains something more certain, it seems justly to deserve to be followed. I get quite a lot out of that even now. And then there's the link to the Wikipedia article on Coify and what Coify said. He was another priest, an advisor to Edwin the King there. So then I did this talking about Benedict Arnold and John F. Kennedy's ask not what you can do for my what my country can do for me, ask what I can do for my country inauguration speech. Benedict Arnold betrayed the new American Union to ended up in Britain. Here I'm sort of saying, well, maybe Boris is a Benedict Arnold, etc., Lord Haw. And then I come to Edmund Burke and his famous speech in Parliament, these present discontents, things like the Oxford Manifesto, liberalism. So, and then end up with Kelvin, the Last Druid documentary. And then I talk about Timonism and Calvinism, etc. And I did this blog about the semi-establishment Pelagianism of Bremain. So there are lots of allusions to different ideas here, but what they actually all boil down to is what David Graeber says, the basic debate in Western philosophy since the Enlightenment has been the argument between determinists and libertarians about free will or determinism. And at the moment, we're in the control of hard determinists who, not only do they not think you can make up your own mind, they more or less don't think you're going to have one and want to implant it in. That's what all that AI stuff is about. So let's just have a listen to this.
Seriously, look No, seriously, chronic once a year.
You got a matching little butler for you, butt fuck.
Are you done?
Oh, yeah.
Mortgage defaults have done nothing but go up. Yet you quote us a higher price on the bonds. Please explain that to me. There's no way that makes sense. There's no way you're marking these swaps appropriately. Why should we back out of this trade right now?
Didn't I say when we made this deal with the rating agencies, the SEC, and the big banks were foolish? Didn't I say that? Didn't I say it? Yes, you did. You did. Shut up. Now their foot's on fire. They think their stake is done and you're surprised.
That's not stupidity, it's fraud.
Tell me the difference between stupid and illegal, and I'll have my wife's brother arrested. That was fine. I guess you just don't realize how foolish the system really is. Yes, there's some shady shit going down, but trust me, it's fueled by stupidity. Look at yourselves. You know, you pass yourself off to cynical people, but I still have some faith in the system, don't you?
I don't.
You accept the thing. You give a shit.
No way.
So that's from the film The Big Short, which is a good film, worth watching. Cynicism and Timonism. This is Diogenes of Cynic, the famous cynic. I'm just going to read this. So, best known of the cynics, tired of the decadence and frivolous excess of his fellow Athenians, he adopted a simple life of dogs, eating scraps, owning little more than his coat, and sleeping in a discarded barrel. Thus, some think that cynic came from the Greek kaino, meaning dog. Cynicism is often contrasted with Timonism. Shakespeare's Timon of Athens. Cynics saw what people could be and were angered by what they had become, and Timonists felt humans were hopelessly stupid and uncaring by nature, and so saw no hope for change. And there's a kind of a free will determinist kind of dichotomy in that. That's the point which I was making by that. So conquest of dough, some graphics, we've done that. This is various versions of that documentary. Here's the YouTube channel. It's had 335,000 views since March 2018, which is pretty good. I put it up in September 2019, and 409 people have watched it on my BitChute channel. BitChute gets booted out of the Chrome browser now and again. It's not very popular because it's not controlled as yet. I went on something called DTube for a while, but my DTube channel doesn't work anymore. DTube and Steemit are kind of related, but there are various supposed bots that go around accusing people of all sorts of things if they don't like the content of your posts. And I don't like the platform because I think it's censored. I've only ever had one video come down off this, and that was when I put up the movie Contagion, and the movie Contagion was taken down, I suspect, because the owners of it have been making quite a lot of money selling that commercially, and I suspect that they've threatened, and so that was taken down. But that's the only time I've ever had anything censored on BitChute. So let's just move swiftly along. That's the website of the World Economic Forum and the introductory video, and then these are all of the different things. So if we just go, where are we? There's COVID-19, and so that's what's in the video, and the title of this video. So that's there. That's Colourland. That's the actual blog that we're going through. That's Celtic Bards Speak Out. That's the poem there. Right. A bit of Paulo Freire here. Critical reflection on practice is a requirement of the relationship between theory and practice. Otherwise, theory becomes simply blah, 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 and practice of pure activism. Paulo Freire, physician, heal thyself, Luke 4:23. Now, the point that Freire is making there is an important one. You know, collectivism, actions speak louder than words. But a word on libertarianism and the Mises, they practice something called praxology, and praxology is best summed up by a Steve Keen joke, which is, well, that's all very well in practice, but does it work in theory? Praxologists think if you can't have a theory about something, it doesn't exist. Bumblebees can fly, but the laws of physics say they can't. Well, bumblebees fly. What's wrong? The bumblebee can't be wrong, it flies. So the laws of physics have got something missing. QED. And that applies to quite a lot of circular reasoning in scientism. And that's just a little meme I made. You know, das Kapital, das Feel. This whole idea that, you know, it's all about your feelings. Well, I mean, obviously I'm talking about subconscious knowing and responding to you know, what is within rather than what's up here or what we think is up here. It's that balance, the yin and yang. And this guy, interesting guy, Justin Walker, the New Chartist movement, I really like him. And his stuff, Bradbury Pound, you can look into that. Brexit Johnson or not, it still isn't cricket. I'm talking about various different stuff, but physician heal thyself, Luke 4:23. You know, the experts, the bureaucrats, the technocrats, really. So then we come to here, the Greek dramatist Aeschylus refers to one in his Prometheus Bound, where the chorus comments to the suffering Prometheus, like an unskilled doctor fallen ill, you lose heart and cannot discover by which remedies to cure your own disease. Now, I'm going to wrap up this video with Ted Hughes's poem, Prometheus Unchained. Right, so now this is the Gollum X1V blog, my friend David Malone's blog, and he put up this coronavirus Africa update. And I noticed Hawkeye, I was only looking at forensic statistician the other day, and he's looking at the statistics of coronavirus and all the rest of it. I think that it's circular reason looking at official figures, which are based, I believe, upon a false premise, is a waste of time. But he's a statistician and wants to. So I've put a comment on that blog and also commented here with this blog and with this video I'm doing now. But back in 2013, Hawkeye and I had an exchange where I was sort of saying, so what's the great about oil? I found out about the abiotic theory of oil, i.e. that, you know, you can't prove oil is a fossil fuel. What is a fossil fuel? In organic chemistry or in synthetic chemistry, you can't tell the difference. So, for some types of coal, you can, coal, charcoal, whatever. But in terms of deep coal, things like anthracite and all the rest of it, it's stretching things to say that a bunch of dinosaurs died, trees died, and it all turned into this sort of like crude oil. And that's a fossil fuel. Fossil fuels, at best, is a hypothesis. Whether it's a falsified hypothesis or not, we can have a discussion. But Hawkeye was keen to point this out to me, and I was sort of saying, well, I'm still not buying it. And so I've just introduced that back and said hi again, and no doubt the discussion can now continue about COVID-19, and he and I may actually end up discussing vaccines and vaccinations, and is the point of COVID-19 to vaccinate against it? We don't have a vaccine for the common cold, which is a coronavirus, and there's a lot of bullshit in all of this to unpack. So there you go. No 60 gigahertz.net. That's the 5G aspects of electromagnetic radiation, etc. So that's some discussion kicking off. And up here, there's a comment by Cavi, which is it on this one or one of the other ones? It must be the blog before that. We're talking about esoteric knowledge and mysticism, Sufism, etc. There's a very interesting, maybe it's this one. Here we go, it is this one, Death of Small Thought. So let's just dive in here. Here we are, Cavi, and this Case Against Reality, and this Donald Hoffman PhD posted these, and I put this last DRUID thing in there. I'm sure I mentioned this. I think he's an Egyptian professor. Yeah, here it is. Or is it? Maybe I didn't put that link in. Is it here? Sorry if this is rambling. No, I haven't put that in. I'll put a link in. It was kind of relevant to these ideas. There's a link just up here, which I just wanted to touch on before we had Ted Hughes. That's Hawkeye's analysis of stuff. Church in the present crisis, is it relevant? I had a very interesting discussion back in 2011 with this Verushka Bettina Benedicto. We were talking about Nova Rerum, which is a encyclical of the Pope, which was quite an interesting encyclical, but you might want to look at that. So that's that one, not buying the oil business. Probability, language of mathematics, this is the linguistic points, linguistic tricks. Kelvin Oberon's very good at talking about these things. This is the Wells book. This is all Wells's fiction, and this is his other genres. And for one blog I read all of these. This non-fiction. There's a very interesting interview he does with Stalin. So that's A Modern Utopia. That's another interesting. This is Men Like Gods. Caligari Plan. Okay, it's worth looking at. Mr. Strite, etc. Orwell's further consideration of Mr. Burnham, etc. Then this is my poem, Globalism Untangled. This was musing upon a question in Parliament in 2017 about the size of the national debt. Well, the current bailout is hugely diluting money that has been given to people for work, and by giving money to people that don't earn it to lend out again. Basically, your wealth is being diluted by all of this stuff. So the extent of any helicopter drop they do is not going to make up the difference of the, what it does to the value of your work. So there you go. Interesting. This guy is quoted in a film about the city, and this is a keynote he gave in Israel, which is interesting, worth listening to. Then that's the feeling of burn thing. This is the quotes of Bede talking about the adoption of Christianity by Edwin. Ecclesiastical history, so on and so forth. Britain's enslavement. Again, this is a very interesting Tacitus Agricola, chapter 21, as all referenced in the blog. Kelvin, right? That's Wells's book on Roman Catholic Church, and then this was interesting. What this talks about is Henry James, W.T. Stead, discussing these psychics who had a show on and all the rest of it, and the criticism of it. Now, Henry James, C.S. Pierce, American Pragmatism, James the Pragmatist, who was influenced by Emanuel Swedenborg, and Swedenborg was a famous mystic. There is a Swedenborgian church. There's an area there which is worth thinking about, casting your mind back to what the beginning of this video is all about, which is Ben McBrady's points that he's making. I do. Pragmatism appeals to me as a philosophical basis, and it's the polar opposite of the sort of dogmatism that we're seeing from the World Economic Theory and all the rest of it. The TINA, there is no alternative, neoliberalism, which I think is fascism. Then where are we going next here? Pledge and controversy in our time. So that was that. Then we come to Ulysses, and the other point I wanted to make about Ulysses was about the censorship. There was a censorship trial about this. Nausicaa, episode 13 of Ulysses. And then we come to the Lost World of the 70s. So I'm just going to play the beginning of this Lost World of the 70s.
All four of the characters in this film felt in their very different ways that they had a mission to mend broken Britain. The first is a senior general, Sir Walter Walker, who was setting up his own private army to save the country from the catastrophe of a takeover by the Marxists.
No one has the guts to do anything. Year after year, we are held to ransom. We are sick and tired of this lack of leadership.
Our second character is Lord Longford, self-appointed guardian of the nation's morals. He pursued his campaign against pornography with such fervour that the media christened him Lord Porn.
Well, teenage perverts, that's presumably not a serious study.
Well, biased against pornography. Surely every decent person is biased against pornography. You might say it's simply being biased against filth.
The third character is Sir Robert Mark, who, as London's top policeman, was on a mission to clean up Scotland Yard and get rid of every corrupt detective.
A bent detective harms the whole fabric of public confidence in the police. And so far as I'm concerned, he will always be a prime target, and he can look to no mercy at all from me.
The last is Sir Jimmy Goldsmith, the tycoon with a complex business and love life, who believed the media were plotting to destroy capitalism.
You lied. That's what I'm trying to show, and what I intend to prove on this program.
At the time, I was making some of these films.
So let's just go back to the introduction now that we've seen the characters there. Longford is interesting on the point I was just making about censorship.
150 feet beneath King's Cross in central London. It houses a treasure trove of old films, some of them containing unseen footage, and 4 of the iconic figures who each played central roles in the tragi-comedy of Britain in the 1970s. It was a bad hair decade. Students were revolting, militant unions were striking. Force was met with force. Asset strippers were flourishing as inflation and unemployment rocketed. And there was even talk of the army taking over. It was an age of paranoia, with a febrile feeling that Britain was on the brink.
So scale that up to a febrile feeling that the world is on the brink, and you don't only have history rhyming, you have history plagiarizing. And if you look at, I mentioned David Malone's blog just now, his father, Adrian Malone, made a series of films called The Age of Uncertainty. And if you look at, there's an episode, well, the last 2 episodes are called A Weekend in Vermont. If you watch those, you'll see people talking about what's now called post-Fordism or post-industrialism, but it's post liberty. These people are talking about this technocratic stuff. So anyway, that's an interesting comparison there to be made. And then we're going to finish with well, this was interesting. Adam Curtis, who I like his documentary work, Century of Self, etc. I made a comment. He put this up that literally when it went up, I saw it, and the last 15 minutes had been cut out of what he put before, and it starts off really where the Lost World of the 70s, Jimmy Goldsmith and Sir Walter Walker, etc., leaves off. This film majors on things like Idi Amin in Uganda and what have you. But again, it's worth watching, and it does provide a context for where things are going. David Malone's other documentary, Icon Earth, is very interesting because it has conversations with Jimmy Goldsmith's brother, Edward Goldsmith, whatever, who started The Ecologist magazine. Again, joining these things up, it's not in isolation. There's a long timeline which leads to where we are today. And as I say, it's not just rhyming, it's plagiarizing. So then here we are. This is a good quote. In an open struggle between truth and falsehood, truth has nothing to fear. And that's a quote from Frank Harris. Here's another, Rules of the Obedience, Full Guidance of Wise Men, Oscar Wilde. Reality-based communities, Karl Rove. I mean, it's all in here. I don't know where I did that blog. That was March the 18th. It's but those quotes come from an earlier blog from some time back. I was looking for the Morley quote that we started with. And then we're just going to finish now with Ted Hughes.
Prometheus on his crag.
Prometheus on his crag had such an advantageous prospect. He could see, even as he slept, the aeons revolving.
He could see, centre of every aeon, like the grit in its pearl, himself sealed on his rock. Between the aeons, dark nothing. But he could see himself wading, escaping through dark nothing from aeon to aeon, announcing freedom. It was his soul sleepwalking, and he dreamed it, only waking when the vulture woke him, in a new aeon, to the old chains and the old torment. Prometheus on his crag spotted the vulture coming out of the sun, the moment it edged clear of the world's edge. There was nothing for him to do as it splayed him open from breastbone to crotch, but peruse its feathers. Black, bold, and plain were those headline letters. Do you want to know what they said? Every feather the same. Today is a fresh start, torn up by its roots as I tear the liver from your body. Prometheus on his crag began to admire the vulture. It knew what it was doing. It went on doing it, swallowing not only his liver, but managing also to digest its guilt, and hang itself again just under the sun, like a heavenly weighing scale, balancing the gift of life and the cost of the gift, without a tremor, as if both were nothing.
Prometheus, he gave the gift of fire and angered the gods, and who the gods despise they first make mad. Thanks for watching, and do look out for the notes and links if you're interested. They'll be on the blog in the description. Thanks very much.